So what's going on with the fighter and the kid nowadays? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. A couple years back, or you know what I mean, for like the past 4 to 5 years, you know what I mean. I've always listened to the fighter and the kid. Sometimes consistently, sometimes not very consistently. But I don't know. Ever since they moved to Austin, Texas, things have just gotten weird. It seems super forced. Yeah, it just does not feel the same at all. Brian does not seem interested anymore in the podcast whatsoever. Brendan seems like he seems defeated almost. Like he's just doing it because he already put in his word that he'd never give up on the podcast, and I feel like he's just doing it just to get the rounds in and just to do it, get some sponsorship money. Um, yeah, I think they're both checked out, man. I know. Even a couple years back, Brendan Schaub and Brian, back when they actually wanted to be on the podcast, they used to say, "Oh yeah, even if this show doesn't make any more money, which they're on the marker to do that, like their views are dropping significantly. Oh, compared to back then, yeah, their views are really dropping. Their spirit nowadays is kind of demotivating. Like it almost makes me not want to tune in, And I've always been a fan. I've listened to their podcast through many eras of my life. It got me through a lot of hard times where I can just focus on their podcast, but nowadays it's nothing like that. It truly feels like a filler podcast. Like the whole podcast is filler. Like they're just talking about topics just to get that hour over with. And you can tell um, when topics are over, they're just like disinterested. Disinterested. They're like, yeah, yeah, next topic. It's like, you know, there's no more magic. It seems like. I don't know what the future is. What the future is for Brendan Schaub. I mean, he moved to Austin, Texas. I mean, Rogan. He's around Rogan, but other than that, like, he really doesn't have a lot of allies in Austin, Texas, or a lot of friends. Um, yeah, I'm concerned because I am a longtime fan of the fighter and the kid, and obviously I've heard and seen a lot about the Brent Schaub drama, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like sometimes you guys are really hard on Brendan. Um, yeah, he can be, he can be obnoxious at times. He dies on hills a lot of the times, but he's I don't know. I think it's just because the old fighter and the kid podcast were actually pretty good podcasts. So that's probably why I still tune in here and there to the podcast. But I mean all the most recent podcasts like from this week, last week, they all feel like dead. They all feel like dead podcasts. Um, I don't know. I, I, I really hope, honestly, for Brian Callen's sake, I hope that he moves on and he, tries to venture on to do other things because, yeah, I can tell he's just not interested in doing that anymore. So, you know, it almost makes me not want to watch, and it's like, it's just a weird thing, you know. It almost seems like Brendan is like forcing him to be in the podcast with him. You know, of course Brian's his own man. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. It feels forced. It feels like a forced podcast, and I really do wonder where they're gonna go in the future. Considering I am a Fighter and the Kid fan, the rare one. I don't really hate Brendan Schaub. He's all right. He's all right. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys agree with me. Peace.